Good morning, super users. Welcome back to Excel Super User Program Day 3. This particular program will be available for all of us to view in my YouTube channel. It is iSelf Academy Snippet or Excel Snippet YouTube channel. You can see this as Excel User Series 6.0. Super users, today we are about to work or learn how to use text formulas and ribbon functions if the text formulas have different scenarios altogether. Before I kickstart our session, so yesterday what we saw, I'll just give you a small idea about it. So we talked about how to convert a text to a particular casing called upper, lower and proper. Plus we also saw how to split the text, and then I stopped in there. And I told you that we are about to see two more dimensions in our data set. One is called a text to column, and another one will be called a flash fill. Again, I have a separate a data set for us to play around for flash fill. In flash fill, I'm going to use flash fill for two instances, and then we're going to see how to work with text to column here. Before I continue furthermore, I would like to showcase what are the formulas available for us in text functionality. If you see, I have somewhere around 20 different formulas that I can use for different purposes when we are working in text formulas, and then we can also use 3 or 2 ribbon functions. I am using it as 3 different variances here. We will see more as we go forward. Again, there are few logics will be very useful for us to work around with the data. Most of the text formulas are for extracting the data from the given data for us. In some situation we will combine them, in some situation we will add a text to it, and so on and so forth. We already saw 3 different logics yesterday, and then we also touched the 4th one called text split. Text split, if you want to do it dynamically, you can use text split as one of the dimension, but again this works only in Office 365. Again, I don't want Office 365 data alone. I want something which I can use it in any version and every version. Then probably if I don't have a formula, I can use a ribbon function. Again, formula, when I use it, it is going to be dynamic in nature. So when you add some data below, the data automatically extracts the data beautifully. If you are using a text to column, then probably we may not able to get what we want in the list here. Sorry, I think I misspelled the data here. So we are about to use one of the logics today called text to column, and then I'm going to use the first option, text to column delimited. As we talked about yesterday's logic, so whenever I play around with a name in a data set, the name nomenclature will always have a space in between. This is how we are taught in our school, and this is what we will be using when we are working in real world scenario also. Again, whenever I work with text to column, please do remember that I'm doing it in an open workbook or a workbook which doesn't have anything other than my data that I am about to extract right now. When I do this, there are 2 different ways I can achieve this data set. So I'll show you how I'm going to use all of them in a specific pattern here. If you closely watch the data, I have a data set in here which is very clear, and I have around 2843 rows. This is a large data that I have here. How do I use a text to column data here? Again, if you want a keyboard shortcut for the text to column, you do get it. Again, we have to work a little differently here. So the text to column normally falls in our data tab or data ribbon. So I'll go back to the Alt button. When I press this, that's going to showcase each and every menu's keyboard shortcut here. When I want to go for data, the data represents A here, so I'm pressing A here. When I do that, the text to column will come as E. So this is how the text to column data will work. Again, at the moment I don't have any data sets here. You can see an error message that says that there is no data in the selected to parse. So it's not allowing me to break the data. So I don't have a data set here. Normally I can extract the data from this line itself, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to copy and paste that in the next column here, because I want to extract this one by one. Again, I'm not going to keep the name above because I just want to break it. Now I would like to break this data in multiple column. When I work with text to column, please do remember that don't do it in a live data or a data which has a lot of data next to it. If you want to extract the data, you can do two small things here. So you can add some columns, but if you feel that how many data that I have here, how many names that comes into play in here, if I know that extensively, then I can add that many number of columns. The largest name that I see in my current list is 4 names that is coming up here. When I extract this data, the first name stays in the same cell. The other names will move to the subsequent columns automatically. So if you have a blank space like this, then you don't have a problem in handling it, because the data is not going to replace the existing data with the data that I'm extracting here. So when you're working on a real-time data set, add more than the data column that is required. If all the data are extracted and still you have some blank columns coming up here, you can delete them. Again, if you want to add a column here, you can do that. Again, to add a column or a row, I'll use a keyboard shortcut here. So let me just put them on the left. I'll just add some more columns here. I'm just adding a column by selecting the column here. To select the column, I gave a keyboard shortcut Control spacebar, and then when I press Control plus, automatically I can add some more data. So the first logic that I'm about to do right now is I'm adding, or I'm selecting the column. Selecting columns will be very easy because you don't want to use a mouse. If you use mouse, nothing wrong in it. I will not curtail you to use mouse. I'm using a keyboard shortcut here called Control spacebar. So that will allow you to add a column. Wherever you want to add a column, you can add. I literally added a column to the left hand side of the data. If you want to, after selecting the column, if you use the Control plus as a keyboard shortcut, the Control plus can be done directly in the numerical keypad. It is up to you, because not every system will have it. Again, if you're using a desktop edition, you will definitely have a num locks or num keys on the right hand side. If you're using a laptop which doesn't have a number locks on the right hand side, then I'll use a keyboard shortcut called Control Shift and a plus here. This will allow me to add a cell, a row or a column normally. But when I use them simultaneously, for example, if I want to add a column here, when I give Control spacebar, that's going to select the list. Again, I have one cell above which is merged, so it's selecting more than one column. For example, if I do that on the left hand side, Control spacebar, that selects the data. The moment I press Control plus, it's going to add a column to me automatically. It's not going to question me in any way. But if I don't select this, then when I press Control plus, it's going to pop up a window like this. It'll ask you a question, what do you want to do? That's why I said that add a cell, comma, row or a column in a data. You can add a cell to the right, you can add a cell downwards, or you can add an entire row or an entire column. I'm interested in adding a column here, so I'm not really bothered about the row component here. But if I do it simultaneously, this pop-up will not come up. When I press this, now I've selected the data. When I press this Control plus, it is not going to question me, or it's not going to ask me a question saying that what do you want to do. It will never ask you that when you are working on the data set here. So now I got the entire list here. So how do I extract this data now? So I'm going to just keep the cursor and select the data from top to bottom, shift control arrow down. That's going to select the whole data. Then I will jump back to the keyboard shortcut if I wanted to. So if I want to add a text to column keyboard shortcut, then I'll be using one of the dimension that is called Alt HAE. This will allow you to add a text to column of data to you with a keyboard shortcut if you wanted to. Again, I'm using the latest version keyboard shortcut. I'm not very sure about the old keyboard shortcut because I seldom use them. Whenever I use a text to column breakup here, I preferably use a mouse over data sets instead of using a keyboard shortcut. So now I'm going to select the whole data. Then I'm going to just say Alt AE. The moment I give Alt AE, it's going to pop up a window for me. Again, I gave a keyboard shortcut above as Alt HAE, but again, I don't want to go for the home tab here. I'll directly go for the data, and then I'll select the text to column here. So Alt AE will be the keyboard shortcut for text to column. So I'm going to just select this range. Alt AE will give you the box here. Again, now I'm going to use the first option called delimited width. What is a delimited width? Again, if you see some numbers or some names or something unique happens all around our data. For example, that's what I said in our previous session. Whenever I use a name, I'll be having a name nomenclature will be followed, where we will have space in between excuse me, space in between each and every data set here. So you can see that I have a name here called Bhavan Mahendra Seth, and then Paresh Chauhan. You can see that after the first name I have a space. In some situation I have dots when it comes to initials for me. If you want to extract all of them separately, you can do that. I'm going to use a simple logic first. Let me just redo this process one more time with the complexity in it. So I'm using the first option called delimited width. I'm going to give a next. So that will take you to the next window and I'll ask you a question. So what is the delimiter that you have in a data set here? By default, the delimiter checkbox will be checked as tab here. Again, I don't have a tab in this dimension, so if I keep the tab ticked, nothing wrong in it, it's not going to really bother you. Even if you take it out, it's not going to be bothering anything bigger here. I know that my name nomenclature gives a space in between each and every data set here, so I can just check out whether we have that in our list. Normally in a text to column, we'll have tab, semicolon, comma, space will come into play. If any other character comes into play, I'll check the other box and then add them. So I'm going to give a tick in the space bar. The moment I do that, you can see that how many names are broken in here. So if you want to see all of them, you can scroll down and see it. But again, if you closely watch, I have one name here called Abdul Hazib KM. Again, in Abdul Hazib KM, if you see, I have a dot in between, but again, that is not a space that I want to do it, but I want to break that KM separately. Then I can add another dimension here and then I can give a dot here. The moment I do that, you can see this variation comes in our data set below. And if you feel that the data sets are doing justice for your data point, then you can just either say finish or you can go to the next option. The next option will tell you what you want to retain this as. So if you want to maintain each and every column in a particular data type like we mentioned earlier, so I'm going to call this as text, and I'm going to call this as text, I'm going to call this as text, and if I have anything else other than this, so okay, right, I'm happy with all of them. Then I'll finish the data. That's going to extract all my data set. I'm going to select all the columns here and then I'll say Alt OCA. That's going to adjust the data set accordingly. Then I can just go back to the home tab and add all border content. So that breaks the data beautifully for me. Now I did the text to column with the delimiter functionality, where it extracts the data completely out of my data set here. This is how I'll use text to column delimited. Very rarely we use the other dimension called text to column fixed width. So when you go for text to column action, so you can see fixed width. Again, when I don't have a nomenclature mentioned in my data set, and if I want to break the data by a specific number of line items or a specific number of characters, then I will use the fixed width. We will see one example as we go forward in our fag end of our basic training. At that time, whatever I've missed in this dimension, I will add them all for our list. Again, this is the file that I've worked. The red color files are all the file that I'm going to work right now for you. The blue color file is for you to use for your references or for your practice session. So all these files are already added in our data in every YouTube file. Now I just added my YouTube video. Probably you will get all the 2-day sessions video for you, and then we can work with the data better. So our data will be varying here. So let me just pick up my YouTube channel, and this is where my entire files will be added. I'm jumping into my YouTube studio here for you, for your references. So I'll show you how the description is gonna be for you. I'm sorry, I'm just reopening this more than once. The system works a little slower than normal. So here I will mention entire data set for us, and then we can see how we're going to use each and every one of them. So I'm going to go back to my YouTube channel, and then I'll go to my YouTube studio. So I've added all our files. Both the files are available, the English one and Tamil one. The last 2 days videos are added. Tamil one second video will be released probably today by noon, because I need to add some more content to the data. I want to add some hashtags to it, so that's going to take a little longer than normal. So this is where the data set comes into play. So I started working on the list here. So I have Tamil versions coming up with dimension. When I normally go into the file, at the bottom of the screen you will see our description. So this is where our class files will be there, and then the timings and the language, everything is mentioned, plus you will be having a timestamp for the same data sets also. So you can check all these dimensions. So I've added all the files for us for our references. You will get all those dimension automatically. So the next formula that I've just finished right now is a text to column delimited. Here we have one more dimension that I can do here. So here I can extract the data differently. Again, here I'm going to use the extraction and the joining here. The next formula that I will use is, now I broke this data into multiple points. I would like, if I get the data like this, how do I connect them all in one single shot? How do I make this data work better for me? This is what we are about to do next. The next formula that we will talk about is called combining the data set here. So we call this as Concat. Concat is another formula which allows us to play around with the data a little better. So I'm adding 2 different file formats for us, so that one you can work on it for your own practices. The other one will be for my own class here, so which will allow me to teach you things better. So what I am about to do right now is, again, this is the concat function that I'm about to use. Let me leave this as it is, because I want to see the end result should be like this. You can do this in 2 different formula. So the first formula point that I wish to keep in here will be the text joint. Again, text joint is the best way of doing it. Again, if you are not using the latest version, then probably the data breakup will be a little, or data joining will be a little odd here. Let's see how I'm going to use concat. When I use concat, I'll be using one more formula here called trim. So let me tell you when I'm going to use a trim, and then I will also touch a formula called len here. So let's see how we're going to use all these dimensions one by one. So let's jump back to the next formula. So here I'm going to bring all the data into one. I'm going to use concat. Again, you have 2 different formulas here. The old school formula is also available for you. If you want, you can use the new school formula also. So the old formula is called concatenate rather, sorry, I'm misspelling it. That was we renamed it at a much better way in 2013 version. This is all version formula. So let me just make this text to column coming up until this, and then here it will be an all version formula for us. Let's see how to combine it. Again, this is going to be a little lengthier for us. When we talked about the formula type yesterday, I told you that I am about to get a single output and single input formula. That's where I'll use function argument in some situation when the output is coming from multiple column, but it is going to combine and give you one single aggregate formulas here. We can do that. Again, aggregate generally is a term used in a numerical data set, but I'm using the same aggregate functionality or the term in a text joining. So how I combine the text here, again, there is another way of also can do it. Again, this is the old school method. We can use ampersand here. So ampersand will allow me to connect all the data beautifully, but that's going to be a very long shot when we do that. So I'm going to use a formula here to achieve it. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to just say equals, and I'll say concat. Again, the concat will allow me to add the full data set better, or the spill effect will come beautifully here. Let's see how I'm going to work on it. So I'm going to just pick up the first column everywhere here. Then I will give control backspace so that the cursor point will come again to the top. Then I'm going to give a tab here. Then I will add a space here. So that's going to give you the comma and space automatically. Tab it down to the next line. Then select all the data sets here. Then jump back again. And this time around my data set goes beyond. Okay, actually I think that I missed something here. Let me just redo this again. So I'm going to come back here because I think that I'm missing something. There is something missing in between. So let me pick up this data completely. Yeah, there is a lot of blank space coming up here. Yes, yeah, when I broke it I have a lot of blank space. That's okay. So this should come until, okay, I have 2000 line items of data sets below, so I cannot have, okay, right, this is the numbers that I should get everywhere. So when I come back here again, my formula has to go, because when I have a blank in between, system will not allow me to go and do things here. So let me just pull this data set until my last line here. The number should be 2843. So I have a lot of space in between, a lot of gaps in between. There are only one names are coming somewhere. Okay, right, tab, space bar, tab, control backspace. Then I'm selecting this. Again, check out the data sets are coming completely. So in some situation, when I concatenate this is where the real headache for me. When I use a spill effect option, I have to select all the data perfectly so that my data doesn't miss anything. After the third name, I will be having a lot of issues here because my data sets are not complete. Most of the people have only their name to first and the last name. They don't have the third name or the fourth name coming up here. So let me just pull them all here. Again, this is a very big search portion for me. And finally I'm selecting this data. Again, see to that, because when we are working on this data set, so see to that we are working on all the data perfectly. So I am manually selecting this for certain reasons here. So now my formula says a very big point here. You can see concat G3 to G2843, again H3 to 2843, I3 to 2843, and J3 to 2843. So now I know that I selected all the data sets here. When I give an OK, that's gonna populate data. Now it's giving you a calc error. I have some blank spaces here, so it's not allowing me to use the spill effect effectively here. So again, my selections or the amount of work that I did is gone in vain. Never mind, I'll use the first option alone. So that way it is gonna allow me to use the data better. When I give an OK, that's going to give you the answer. Then I will try to copy paste it. So I'll copy this and I'll jump to the last line in my data set here, and then I'll paste it here. So it's in L column, that is perfect. So let me select L here. So now all my names are added in one single dimension. Again, I could have used any one of the formula here. Again, this is the formula that I use. Again, if I go down to this dimension of data, the delimiter width is something which but again, if I use this in the latest formula, so we have used one of the formula that I've specified a while ago. That's called concat here. I said I can use an ampersand. I can use the old formula called concatenate. But this time around, I'm not going to use any one of them. I'm going to just use the one which I feel is easier to use. Is called the 2019 formula, or any version above than that will have this formula. We call this as text joint. Whenever I have data which is ununiform in nature, I preferably use a text joint. Again, I'm going to come back here. I'll say equals text joint, Control A, and this formula is not an Office 365 formula alone. From our 2019 version, we will have it. Again, this formula syntax will be a little different. That's why I opened the function argument for us. If you closely watch this formula is going to give us an answer very nicely. In our previous formula, when I worked on it, so let me just come back to this formula and show how the formula is showcasing in my formula tab. You can see that this is giving a very odd list, and then you are seeing a lot of data set in this formula. So I see a lot of space in between. When I use a text join functionality, this will not happen. Whenever I have a larger data set like this, I preferably use a text to join functionality instead of concat. So I'm going to just say equals text joint, Control A. Again, why I'm using Control A is it's easier to select the first cells here. So I'm going to give a space bar here. That is my delimiter in the list here, and then I'm going to leave the ignore empty space as it is. When I do that, the system will ignore wherever there is no names available after this. Let me just add the first text, tab, second text, tab, third text, tab, fourth text, and then give an OK. And that's going to give you the answer. I'm going to copy this. I'll come back to the last line here, and then I'll paste this everywhere. Again, the result variation is nothing here, so the result will be similar here. But the advantage of this will be the formula will be very light. It is not going to really make our formula look real odd here, but it will make our life a little easier here. But the problem that I'll face when I do this, now if I combine the data like this, and if I want to bring a VLOOKUP or any of the comparison operator here, my concat formula will always have an issue. The reason why is my concat formula will be always a little lengthier than the text join functionality. So if you closely watch, let me just pick up one of the sample example here. When I combine this data, my total text length should be equivalent to this. So when I say Baban, it's 6 character. I have a space in between 7 character. Then I have Mahendra, that's an 8 character, 15 characters totally, and I have a space 60, then 15 plus 116, and then I have 5 more characters. 21 characters should be the length here. So when I go for one more formula that I will use to find the length of the text, I'll use len, and then I'll select this and give an enter. That's going to give you exactly 21. But if I say use the same formula in a concat option, it is going to give you one more, because I chose the 4th column here. The speciality of text join functionality is when I go for text join functionality, the text join functionality asks me one question when I do that. It said ignore empty. So I left the ignore empty there. Because of that, if there is any empty cell comes into play after or before the data set, that is going to ignore that, so it will not take the data set work properly. If I use the text to join function, then that makes my life a little more better. If I'm using concat, I have to add one more dimension to this data. This is where I'll be using trim function in front of my concat. When I do that, that's going to remove all the unwanted files or the unwanted spaces that I have here. By that way, the length of the text will be similar. So let me just punch this all around the data, and then again I'm punching this all around the data for my list here. So if you closely watch, most of them are similar here. Again, if I want to find out whether this is really working properly, then I will be using one more dimension to make sure the data set work for me properly. That's where I'll use another function called extract or exact. So again, these are the formulas that we have in our list here. So I am not only using trim, I'm using extract. So extract or exact, what it does for you is it will allow you to compare the data better. So now I want to see whether all my answers are coming true or false here. I'm going to just say equals exact. Then I'm going to select the first result. I'll give a comma. I'll select the second result. This is going to be a formula which allows you to compare and contrast the data, whether it is numerical or it is text here. So I will try to find out whether I have any false in here. To do that, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to use one more dimension here called filter. For this, I'm going to hit a Control Shift L. Again, I'm trying to tell you a lot of things here, so when I move it, you will not see a false here. That means all the 2800 plus rows of data are exactly matching after I implemented the trim function here. If you get a data like this, I preferably do not use concat function to join them up. I preferably use a text join function, so that's not gonna add unwanted spaces here. Wherever I have an unwanted space in the data set, that will be removed automatically. You can achieve this. The result wise, the result is not going to change much. Irrespective of what you do, the result is going to be same. Whether I use ampersand, it is going to give you the same odd answer. Even if I use concatenate, it is going to give you the same answer. Whenever I have a data set like this, I preferably use the data to get combined by using a text join functionality. So this is how we use concat, text joint, len, trim in concat, and exact when I go for the formula part here. This is how the data set is gonna work for us. So I just picked up one of the formula here, and this is the formula that I've completed. So in our current point, I used text joint to join the text, concat to join the text. When I use concat, I have to use furthermore formulas like trim, and then to find out the length of the text, and then to make sure the length of the text works correctly or not, I used the compare text called exact. Now we are going to work on the next dimension called flash fill. Again, for flash fill, I'm going to use in two different dimensions here. One to extract the data, one to combine the data or join the data. So let's see what we are about to use in these dimensions. I will try to cover as many components as possible today. Probably I may not be able to complete all of them. Probably I'll try to add one more dimension of extracting the data from a list, and then I will use that in Office 365 latest version. That is far easier to do it. In the old school version, I'll be using all these formulas to extract the data set here. So before I go to that point, let me jump back to the list here. The first part is called I'm extracting the data in Excel using the flash fill option. Again, when I go for a flash fill option, why I didn't use this? Because flash fill option is a beautiful option that we have here, which not just extracts the data from us in a combined data set, we can also combine data set if I wanted to. It is very easy to do so. Again, I have a catch when I do that in flash fill here. So I need to have a uniform data set to perform. An ununiform data set will not allow you to add the data properly. And for our furthermore exercises or furthermore ideology in our files, I have added another file for us on class 3 called flash fill for you. It has a lot of example in it. I have around 27 plus 30 examples, I believe, so I'm not sure about the numbers here. So you can see this particular cell. This will be useful for you to work around. I'm taking out of that, I'm taking only 2 different logics here, not more than that. So I'm just showing you how I'm going to use this data here. So now I have a data set here. If you closely watch, this is a uniform data set. I only have first name and last name. I don't have a lot of names. In the earlier text to column functionality, when I gone into it, you see the names are a little weird here because the names are not uniform across the data set. So somebody have 2 names, somebody have a name and an initial, somebody have 4 names, somebody have 3 names, and so on and so forth. But I am interested in working on this data. Here you can see I have only 2 names coming up here. Let's see how I'm going to work on this data. To do this, I'm going to go for this data. Again, this particular formula will do wonders for me. The reason why I call this formula will do wonders for me is because this is going to use the first logic that I worked. I used proper, upper and lower. I created a formula to do it, but when I go for a extract functionality, I really don't want to work around, or I don't really want to break my head to do so. The first instance that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to break all my first name here. If I want all the names to come in capital, I'm not going to do anything very big. I'm going to switch on the caps lock and I'm going to type Neil here. And then if I want to use the flash fill, I can do that via two different dimensions. I cannot add a flash fill using edit mode. Now you can see that the moment the cursor blinks in my name, all my ribbons or most of my ribbons are grayed out here, because I cannot use that in an edit mode here. When I give an enter, the moment I do that, that's going to showcase all my ribbons above, not grayed out, all are usable right now. To use a flash fill, my cursor will be at the second line. I can either go to my home tab and then I can use the editing subgroup and go to the fill. At the bottom you will see flash fill here, or I can jump back to my data, and in the data after the text to column you will see flash fill activated here. And you have a keyboard shortcut for it. If you want to use a flash fill, you can also use Control E is a keyboard shortcut. So I'm going to click the flash fill here. The moment I do it, you can see all my names are available in caps lock, and if you closely watch, all my first names are extracted in one single column. The only catch when I use flash fill will be my flash fill will work only in a uniform data set. We cannot use them in an ununiform data set. Wherever I have a data which is a little uneven in the structure, then it won't work for you. Now I want all my last name to be in small letters. Then I'm removing the caps lock here. I'm adding only the Lieber in this point. Normally I will do simultaneously. I will not go and use the mouse options here. I'll give Control Enter so that the cursor point will be retained in the same cell. I'll give Control E. That's gonna populate my second name here. Again, when I work on this data, when I combine this will look a little odd. So whenever you are extracting or whenever you're trying to do something better, make sure that they are all coming in one dimension. So I'm going to type everything in caps, Control Enter, and then the moment I do the Control Enter, automatically my flash fill is still acted, and then the flash fill automatically added my list here. Now I extracted the data into two different columns. The first column talks about the first name. The second column talks about the last name for me. This is how I extract the data here. So what the function that I did first is called extract. Now I'm going to combine this data, or I can call this as join. So I'm not going to add the headers here. So I'm going to come down here. I'll just say Neil, and then I'm going to type them Lieber. So I'm going to type them in with a proper case here, and then I'm just using this. I'll give Control Enter, Control E. That is going to combine the data. Again, it gives you the names because it picked the first column and it works for me. Again, there is one more catch available here. Now if I try to do the same logic, probably in here the system will shout at me. So whenever I do a flash fill, the problem that I will face when I use the flash fill will be flash fill will not work for me when I work with some spaces in between. So you will see an error message stating that this is not going to allow you to do that. So now if I do the same logic somewhere over here, that's going to happily bring the data set for me. That's going to give you all information that I require here. So this is the flash fills limitations that we have here. We may not be able to get all the flash fill however we wanted it to be. Now I said that I showed you how do I extract the data, how do I combine the data, what about the existing data that we had here. But in some situation I can try to add another list. Generally this is a lot used by a HR executive in a company. For example, now I have these names coming up here. I know their first name and last name. Now I want to give their email IDs and access key card for them. For that I want to create an email address for each and every one of them. So how do I create an email address for them is I'll use the first name completely. I'll use the last name as their initial here. And I'm going to add the company name after that in the email address. To do that, I'm not going to do anything very big. This is not the data set that I have in my data set. I'm just showing you one example on the right. I'm going to just say Neil, or I'm going to type everything in small. So Neil, I'll just say dot, and then I'm going to use the first letter called L, and then I'm going to add my company name, myselfacademy.com. Now I'm not going to do anything very big, just give control enter, control E. The first name and the first letter will be picked from the left column, and myself academy will be added from the top data. And then you can see I've created the email address for almost 10 people in under 10 seconds. If this is a very large data, don't worry about it. You can achieve this for anybody that you want here. So even if you want to use this in a text to column data set, if you want to just say bhavan.m and so on, so you can do that. Again, I will be having the second name everywhere here. I don't think that I have any difficulty in handling, but again, if somebody have only one name, then I'll be in a spot of others. So I can see Umapati doesn't have it. There are a few people who don't have this data set completely. So when I try to do it in an ununiform data set, I'll be in a spot of bother. So this is how I'll use flash fill to extract the text, flash fill to combine the text for me. So I have another 20 minutes to play around with my data. Let me pick one data where we are about to talk about the extractions of data in the old school methodology and extractions of the data in a new school methodology. So new school will be a little more comfortable than the old school methodology. Old school methodology has to do a lot of things in it. And let's see how we're going to use these dimensions better. So let me pick up a data for us, and then we will see how we're going to use it. So let me just pick a data from my Anna's file, which I did recently. So let me just add, because this is the file I should have added, but I think that I thought that I couldn't able to finish all of them today. So that's the only reason why I didn't add this file for us. Perfect. Yes. I'm removing everything that I have here. I should have done this a while ago, but I didn't do that. So let me just pick up this as our extract file, and this is a place where I'm gonna create this file for us. So again, when I use this file, the best way of using it in the latest version, because the latest version makes our life a little easier here. So let's see how I'm going to use this data better. So let's work on each and every data set and how each and every data set is going to work for us. We'll see them all. The first logic is, this is again used as a pre-work for my partial VLOOKUP. So what is the data that I have here? Again, there are a few points which will be easier. There are a few points which will be tougher for me. So let's see how I'm going to use this data in two different dimensions, and then how I'm going to use this data in one single dimension. I'll show you all of them here. So in the left hand side, I'm going to use the old school methodology. In the right hand side, I'm going to use the latest function called text after. Again, I can use a text after here, or I'll say text before here. Again, when I come down here, this is where the real challenge will come into play. I'm going to use both the formula text before and after. Again, I'll repeat the same logic when I do this, because even in here I need the same logic to come into play. Again, the left hand side formula will be cumbersome, so let me start with the list. Again, I have good 15 minutes to work around, and I will show the data set very effectively, or it will be very easy when I use text after and text before, and when I use the other functionality, that's going to take a humongous time for us. Again, if you closely watch, I have IDs coming on the right hand side, and I have the complete ID coming on the left hand side data set here. So what I want to do right now is I want to extract the data and match these two dimensions. So I'm going to bring the IDs here, and I'm going to extract the IDs according to the data sets here. So in some situation, my ID usages is very easy. So now I want to extract this data. If you see the ID that is given on the right hand side, I want to extract that ID from this ID sets here. When I use this, I'm going to use one of the formula that we have in a data set, which is called write. So it's a straightforward formula that I will be using in here. I'm not going to really break my head to work around. So I'm going to just come down here, I'll just say equals write, and then I'll select this text here, and I'm going to extract B25R or C20R and Q20L. If the data are uniform in the ID list, then that will make my life a little more easier. I'm going to give a comma, and then how many characters that I have in B25R is 4. I'm going to give a 4 here and close the bracket and give an enter. And when I populate this, I'll get all the answers here. Again, I'm doing it one by one. Let me just see whether it's going to work in the spell effect for me. I'm going to just say equals write, tab, select all the data, give a comma, and 4, close the bracket and give an enter. That's going to extract and populate the data automatically one below the other one. So I used a formula here for our list, which is called so let me just redo this one more time. And let me add one more column here because I want to show the formulas also here. I'm using a spill effect, so the formula will come only on the first cell, not in all the cells here. So now I'm going to come down here, I'm going to just say equals write, select all the column, give a comma and 4 and give an enter. That's going to populate all my answers automatically. And this is in both the formula, the dimension is very easier. So for example, when I work on this using the latest version or latest formula, I'll just say equals text after, then I'll ask you a question. So this is the text that I want to bring in here. I'm going to give a comma, and then in double quotes I'm going to call this as hyphen. Again, if I go for the hyphen, then the hyphen, if it comes more than one time, then I have one more dimension here called instant number. Now I want to extract the data which comes after the second hyphen called B25R. So if I give 1 here, it is going to extract 2, 3, 4 and then hyphen for me. If I'm extracting B25R, then I have to give the last dimension. I'm going to say 2 here and close the bracket and give an enter. That's going to populate. And if you are adding this for the spell effect, I will say equals text after, control A, and then the text box I'm going to select all of them. Tab, the delimiter is going to be hyphen, tab, then it'll ask you the instant name, and we have a lot more here. I'm going to use the first simple logics on the data set. I'll say 2 and give an enter. That's going to extract all my data and populate the data for me. And when I try to write the formula here, and this is the formula that I got on this list. So the formula will be text after the text range, and then I gave an hyphen because that is what the delimiter here for me, and then I'm going to extract the last 4 line items. I never mentioned the characters here. I'm extracting based on the delimiters here. Whatever we have, everything will come automatically irrespective of their output here. This is our first logic. Again, the second logic is going to become even more cumbersome. The reason why it is going to become cumbersome is because the data sets below are not constant. The moment I do that, now I can see the first data set is 6 character, the second data set is 7 character, and the final data set is 4 character. I cannot use left comma 6, left comma 7, left comma A4, and so on and so forth. That's going to become a long shot in achieving what we want to achieve out of the data sets here. To make sure the data sets are coming properly here and I'm making the data work better for me, I will always use a logic here called search, or I can use a logic here called find. There is one catch when I do that, because this is going to become the first instant alone, not the last instant. So for example, if you closely watch the data's uniformity is still maintained intact. So I don't have any problem in handling these data sets. I will work beautifully, but again, I have to extract this data with a lot of efforts in here. It's not going to be that easier as I'm about to use on to the right or on to the other dimensions here. So let's see how we're going to use this data a little better. For this, I'm going to use a logic called search. So I'm going to extract this data one by one. I'm not going to do anything very big here because I could have done a spell effect here, but again, spell effect will not allow me to mark my formulas completely, so I'm going to use one by one. So when I use a search functionality, this search function will have 3 different syntax. I'm going to use the first 2 here. So I'm going to just say what is the function, or what I'm trying to find out here. I want to find out where the hyphen lies here. Then when I give a comma, the function argument will add the double quotes for me, and I'm gonna get the hyphen from this text here. Moment I do that, it is gonna find out the first hyphen available in my data set. I mentioned the len on our right hand side ID where it says 6, but if you see, the answer in the search will be 7, because after the belen I'm getting the first line here. This is gonna automatically find out for all of them, and I give an OK. That's going to give you the 7 here. I'm going to just drag it down to the other line item. Then it's going to tell you where this data is going to come into play. So it says that I have a 7th item is my hyphen, and 8th item is my hyphen, and 5th item is an hyphen, because it is adding after the text. I have an hyphen here. So that's what it says here. So I'm going to copy and paste this, or I'm going to keep the formula, copy and paste this here. I'm using a Google keyboard shortcut, Control C, Control Shift and a V. The reason why is I'm going to make a change in the formula here. When I do that, my earlier formula should not go for a toss. Now I will use the left functionality here. So that's going to showcase the data, how it's going to come into play. Now I will add the left here. When I go for the left, when I give a Control A, and it will ask you what is the text, and then how long you want to cut the text here. So like the right, in the right I gave right, and then I gave a 4 here because the data sets are common here. Here the data is not common, it is changing for line item. So I'm selecting this text here, then I'm going to give a comma, and I have to close the bracket twice here so that I get 2 formulas covered automatically. If I don't do that, it's going to shout at you saying that you have to add one more parenthesis at the last. I'll just give an OK. That's going to extract the data. Now you can see that my formula is not just search, and you can see that it is saying left A14, search will come into play. But again, when I populate this formula all around, I am okay with that, but I'm not exactly matching the ID here because I have an additional item of hyphen comes in place here. Again, I'm going to change this formula. I'm going to say copy and then paste special values here. Now I will add the formula again on top. Now I'm going to make one more change in the formula. So what I will do right now is I will come to the edit part of the search, and then I'll just say -1. When I do that, automatically that is going to add or remove the additional point for me. So when I populate that, that will exactly match with whatever data that I have here. And if you want to check whether the answer is coming correctly or not, I'm going to just say equals exact. I'm going to select this comma this, close the bracket and give an enter, and if it shows true everywhere, then my answer matches in every dimension possible. The casing sense wise, the data sets are coming beautifully here. Again, I literally worked way too much here, so this is the way my Guruji always tell me to work on it. He'll always say that work the formula from inside out. So that's what I did right now. So first I searched where the hyphen lies, and then I added a left in front of the search. But again, I still have the additional content that I had here. Then in the search, I removed one column out of the equation. That will make my life a little more easier. If I want to use this in my data set using the latest formulas here, then that's going to make my life even more easier. So let me just show you how I'm going to work on this. This time around, I'm going to use the spell effect for me. I'm going to just say equals text before formula. Then we'll ask you a question. So what do you want to do with it? So I want to extract all the names before or the first name from my ID here. So I'm going to select the text as this. Then I'll give a tab. It'll ask you what is your delimiter. My delimiter is hyphen. And then I'll give a tab. Then I'll ask you before which data that you want to extract here. I want to get the hyphen here. Anything comes before this hyphen should all be removed here. So I'm going to use the instant name as 1. And when I give an OK, that's going to extract the first name alone. If I use this as a spell effect, that's going to make my life a little more better. So I'm going to just say text before, Control A, and then select all the data here, tab it down. I'll just say the delimiter is going to be hyphen, tab it down, and the instant is going to first instant. Any number or anything that comes before the first hyphen, extract all of them. That's what I'm going to try to do. That when I give an enter, that's going to automatically populate all my answer. And if you see, my answers comes beautifully here. It says that Belen, Corletto and Quad automatically. Again, on the left hand side, I really worked way too hard to achieve it, but on the right hand side, I didn't sweat much, but I can able to achieve exactly what I want. So we have few more formula comes into play. Again, if I take this, I need some more time to complete. So probably when we start our session tomorrow, we will continue with this. So we have few more formulas to cover. So when we come back tomorrow, so today I didn't touch the find and substitute yet, so that formula is still be available. The rest of the formula I touched a bit. Again I didn't touch the mid function here. I've completed only certain formulas here because I don't want to really make a life a little odd here. So tomorrow when we come back, we will see mid functionality, how to use find. Search and find will be similar in pattern. How to use substitute function, how I'm going to use a dollar symbol, or how I'm going to add a dollar in front of a text or a dollar in front of number. What is the repeat function will allow us to do, what is a clean function will allow us to do. If time permits, I will also teach you how to work with text to column here, because tomorrow I'm planning to go for one more dimension that is called numbering formulas. So we will go for the other dimension also. So I'll take this as the first instant, and then I will work and finish off this. Probably this will take around 15-20 minutes for me. Then I'll start the numbering formula with the day 4 of the data sets, or if I can able to do something more in this, I will try to add more text functions that I can. So I just gave you 20 formulas totally, but I didn't cover all 20 formulas. I am still left with 6 more formulas here. I just showed you how to work with 14 formulas here, including yesterday's flag end of the session. Plus I showed you how to extract the data using text to column, delimited with, and then how to extract and combine text using a flash fill, and where we can use these 2 dimensions and where we can use these 2 dimensions. So uniform data can be done with flash fill, and ununiform data set can be done with the text to column here. Thank you so much, super users. I'll catch you up tomorrow. We'll see how we're going to work with number formulas when we come back tomorrow. Again, I showed you what are all the variant we have here, and how we can use something better, and how we can not use something effectively here. So So all those dimensions are available for you. Please go through those data patiently, and then please learn as many formula as possible. I'm adding all these files, and the link will be added in our description below in our YouTube channel. Please do click that link. You can get all days file in it, day 1, day 2 and day 3. Today's file was also added here. I'll be adding more files as we go forward, so all our 25 days formula files will be there for you to use around it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day ahead. Catch you in the Tamil program in the evening for us. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye.